welcome back to another video. I'm going to try to do something a little bit different in this video, and that is kind of do a little bit of voiceover, see if you guys like this kind of style a little better. So right now I'm obviously fishing into a little bit of like, I wouldn't say like full out blitzing fish, but definitely pods of heavy feeding bass. And the cool thing about when the fall run, I guess, is the bass are chasing bait pretty aggressively around most points on Cape Ann and rocky areas. Anything with a little bit of like deeper, cleaner water tends to be a pretty good area to look for. So a spot like this, which generally actually doesn't produce much of anything throughout the summer, will have bait and bass moving through it at particular points throughout the fall. And it's one of those things that's all very visual. If you can get a chance to drive around and look, and you can see birds or bass breaking on the surface, which is what I did this day. I was able to drive around a little bit and look for some birds, and I sure enough saw some birds working. And you can see over my shoulder, like, there's some bass popping out there. It's not what I would call like a full-out blitz, but I will say that there's thousands and thousands of striped bass pushing across the rocks right now. I mean, every like point and cove for the past mile, there are bass moving along it, which is really awesome because you can basically cast anywhere and do whatever you want and fish with whatever you want, and boom, you're into fish. I mean, that's one of those things that is so awesome about the fall. And it really doesn't take a ton of skill to be able to do that. So literally anyone who puts in their time should be able to catch some nice bass if you put in time. I caught a lot of better bass this season, not because I knew where they were or what was going on. It was more because I just put in a lot of time this year in this fall. Something that I wasn't able to do last season, so I wasn't able to produce as many bass. And I mean, I did see a few better splashes. I had bass that stay up to 35 inches. Unfortunately, I caught some bass before I started to record that were a lot better than the ones I ended up catching today on video. But yeah, there's some solid bass in these schools, like high, like over slot fish, but not quite 40 inches, which is awesome. Always cool to catch bass that are that big. And as well as I did manage to hook a bluefish today, which is kind of crazy because it's October when I was filming this. So that day that I caught a bluefish was kind of late for there to be bluefish around. But another thing that I'm doing is trying to cull the bigger bass out of the school, and the way I'm doing that is actually working my pencil a lot slower and more with a rhythmic, slow walking action. I'm using a pencil in this that I'm actually currently building with Pumbaa plugs, and it's gonna be an awesome pencil when it's done. I've caught a ton of bass on it. I gave it to a bunch of guys, and they've caught a ton of really nice bass on it. So I'm super excited for this pencil to come out. But right now you could literally throw a hot stove out there and they'd probably eat it. They're just being so aggressive. And they're feeding on fairly small peanut bunker, which can be more finicky bass, but this day, I mean, the water's super clear as well, which doesn't generally help the aggression of the fish, but yeah, it's one of those things that every once in a while you can get on a feed where, like, yeah, these are better sized schoolie to low slot fish. I'm always out angling these bass in a big way, but like that fish there is probably pretty close to 28 inches, believe it or not. It's so funny, I always joke that, like, because I am pretty tall, that a lot of these bass look very, very short compared to me. And that one in particular looked like, you know, it was 22, 23 inches when in reality it's probably like 29. So yeah, that was like one of the better bass that I ended up catching, I think, on film today. but you can see the slower action that I'm giving it, and that was a good example where I gave it some slower action, and the bass came up and hit it. And I actually posted this on Instagram, so we made the comment, oh, you work your pencils mostly with your hand and wrist curl. And that's like a great way. The guy was saying that's a great way to relieve some of the like shoulder strain of using your whole arm to work the pencil. It allows you to work pencils longer, and that's 100% the case. You know, for doing this for years and years and years, throwing pencils with really big rods, little rods when I was younger, so every rod seemed huge. I like adopted this way of working pencils where it is just with your hand and wrist, and that for sure will help you be able to work pencils longer for a longer part of the day. And then I also like the setups that I'm running too will help me with that as well. This, I believe, is actually the bluefish that I hooked. I ended up dropping this fish. I was like, geez, it's fighting hard, because it didn't feel very heavy, but it was definitely like fighting a little bit harder than these schoolies. I think he ends up jumping. I don't know if I got it on film, but the thing jumped out of the water and shook the hook. And I was like, oh wow, there's actually some blues. And then I immediately changed to a plastic plug because I was like, I don't want to wreck my nice wooden, I only have a couple of these prototypes, and of course, yeah, so you probably jumped just out of frame there, and I was like, oh shoot, that was a blue. So I immediately go to change the plug. I don't know if I get that on film or not, but still, the bluefish were also mixed in with the bass, which is kind of interesting because I did see some bigger splashes. And the other thing that's kind of cool is we've been seeing a lot of bluefin tuna offshore around here, not this spot in particular, but more in Gloucester and in Rockport off the rocks, just driving around or drinking coffee, you're actually seeing bluefin tuna. Alright, so this is what I'm doing right here. I just pitched this out. It's because I can see schools of hundreds of striped bass cruising along the edge of the rocks here, and they're all fairly small, they're like low slot fish, but it's too tempting when they're not really showing out deep to give it a cast. And sometimes when they're in the deeper water, they're not quite, they're more traveling. Like these bass, yeah, they're feeding right now on peanuts, but they're also traveling. And so the bass that are in closer to the rocks are going to be a little bit more aggressive. They might not be as big. Most of the time the bigger bass will stay a little further off the rocks, but they'll be a lot more aggressive. So I had been taking a bunch of casts without fish. I kept seeing these schools of bass move by the rocks. So then right here at the end, I end up making a bunch of shorter casts to just get the rod bent a little bit this morning, and see if I can, pull some nicer, little slot fish that I saw cruising around the rocks. Because, yeah, there were probably some nicer bass out far. I remember on this area 2 days before, there was some serious bass moving through here. And I hooked and dropped probably something that was 30 some odd pounds in the same area. But it's one of those things that when you have so many schooly 35-inch bass that are feeding so aggressively, it is pretty damn difficult to get those bigger ones to hit. So I only had a few opportunities at bigger fish, and unfortunately one of the only opportunities I got to really stick hooks into one, I ended up pulling those hooks. A little jump too on that one, that's pretty nice. And I've had a few bass this year jump out of the water, which has been actually pretty epic. So I know this is a little bit different of a video where I'm kind of talking through it. If you guys like videos like this, I'll definitely do some more of those, more narrated stuff, so you can kind of see what was going through my mind at this time. As well as I'm going to do some videos where I break down specific fish that I caught and the tactics that I was using to catch those fish. It is kind of crazy right now because it's the middle of the fall run, so I haven't had any time to really sit down and edit some videos too well, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to definitely do some more highly edited videos in the future. So if you guys like this video, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy this last fish.